So what I'll often do with the scrub pythons in particular, but really any snake, instead of going above the head, I'll go under the head. What's going on, everybody? Stephen Kush here on the MorphMarket YouTube channel. Today is going to be all about python behavior. A lot of species out there have bad reputations for having bad attitudes or being hard to work with. In my experience, that all really comes down to understanding the behavior of those animals. And once you do, the animals actually become pretty easy to work with and a lot of fun, very rewarding. All right, so before we get into some of the behaviors you want to look for and try to avoid in more defensive animals, it's important to understand the good behaviors that you want to see in your snakes and what you are striving to achieve in animals that may need some work. This right here is one of my female Halmahera scrub pythons. Not only is she absolutely gorgeous, but she has a pretty good demeanor as well. Her right now, I'm seeing that she's moving slowly, methodically, not necessarily a particular direction in mind. Her tongue flicks are slow. If they were either not present or really fast, that would be a sign that she's not feeling super comfortable. It has this tail anchor on my wrist right here. This is a vitally important part of that process. It helps them feel comfortable where they are. Obviously in the wild, they would be anchoring that tail around a tree branch or something for stability. The tail wrap right now, it's firm but not necessarily tight. One of the things that you would want to look for in a snake that is acting a little bit more defensive is that tail anchor kind of cinching down a little bit tighter than the snake normally would have it. But right now, the way that she's acting, nothing that I would be concerned about whatsoever. All right, here's one of my male barneck scrub pythons. Produced him in 2022, so he is closing in on 3 years old. He's absolutely gorgeous. This snake obviously has a very good demeanor as well. We'll be talking about some of the behaviors you want to look for and try to avoid in animals that are potentially going to be defensive or aggressive with you. The first thing you'll notice when you begin the interaction with the animal is that it is going to be very obviously physically distressed, be it running very fast, trying to flee from you, or standing its ground and trying to strike at you. With a lot of species of pythons, when they are running like that, if you were to grab them, that would often result in that snake musking on you, which is never a fun experience and one that I try to avoid altogether. When dealing with an animal like that, the main thing that you want to avoid, first and foremost, is putting any sort of actual pressure on the animal, particularly on the spine. Really bring out a response in them as if they were being hunted, let's say by a bird or something. A predator is going to grab the snake top down. What I like to do, and a lot of other people like to do, is to go underneath the snake and make contact, and even at times bring the snake down to you. Contact underneath the body is going to be much less threatening for them to create as bad of a reaction as a full grab like that would. Sometimes when they feel that heat signature hit their belly scoots, they're still not going to be happy about it and may continue to try to run past you. You just want to let that animal go, not grab it, not try to restrain it at all, and go back and try to grab again. So like I said previously, and as you can see with this snake doing, the snake has me gripped. It has some points of contact to make itself feel comfortable, but the grip is not necessarily too hard. I could pull that snake off with ease if I wanted to, and then that tail anchor is actually pretty light on my arm right now. As soon as you start to feel that snake cinch down at all to where it's applying extra pressure, more pressure than that thing would really need to just maintain its body position there, that's a sign that that animal is not necessarily too happy and maybe trying to plot a bite at you. I feel that happening to me when I'm handling a snake. My first move is immediately to try to remove that animal from my body. I personally am of the opinion that any bite during a handling session is a step in the opposite direction. So my philosophy when handling my pythons and trying to raise them up is to try to avoid a bite by all means. And I have found personally that works well to kind of establish a healthy relationship with the animal and to not make a pattern out of that. I often find that snakes that bite me really in any context are more likely to do it again later than animals that are trying to might feel defensive enough to where that's a reaction that they're going to have, but they never get the opportunity to bite me, and that relationship building process ends up being much quicker. All right, so now that we've discussed some of the things you want to look for and try to avoid, for instance, I was in a situation with this snake where I'm handling it and I'm a little bit worried about its behavior and I think a bite might be incoming. The first thing that I would want to do with the animal is to try to get its attention off of me. So particularly with scrub pythons, with lots of other arboreals, they are pretty visually inclined. That coupled with their heat sensory is going to key in primarily on your face, maybe the other arm. Visually, they're all very stimulated. So when I'm handling really any snake, but particularly one that's a little bit more reactive, a little more defensive, the offhand that I'm not using to handle the snake, I'm not waving it around, making a scene to where the snake is going to, be nervous about what's going on there and is going to key in on that. With this snake right here, if it was acting up a little bit, one of my first things to do would be to not have my right hand be a source of any sort of stress for that animal. Next thing you want to do is to try to change that animal's attention from you to anything else. That can be done in a handful of different ways. Any sort of arboreal, the thing that you want to do with them is to raise them up. That's their goal as a species, is to go up. And when they are up, when they're higher than you, when they feel like they have that vantage point, they're going to feel more comfortable. I'll just put the snake straight up above my head and not look at it. Obviously, this is not a foolproof method. The snake is still on your arm, but more times than not, that will create a scenario where that animal instantly becomes a lot more comfortable, especially if you're not making eye contact with it anymore. All right, so the last and probably most important piece of this discussion is that of the use of snake hooks. If you're a snake keeper and you have more than a few animals, there really is no excuse to not have at least a couple good snake hooks around. They make everything so much easier, and especially if you want to deal with larger species of boas, pythons, and even colubrids for that matter, you really need a good snake hook or two. Obviously, whenever I'm interacting with any snake that is not super friendly or that I don't necessarily trust yet, I'm always using a snake hook. There are a few basic principles of using a snake hook that really apply to almost every single snake. And obviously this guy right here, the purpose of the snake hook is just to create separation between you and the animal. You can see here, his head is pretty far away from my body and my arms, account of that hook being in use. And it's all about kind of the proper balance of that snake on the hook. So the hook itself should be gripping the animal somewhere in the first third of the body, usually right around where the first third point down of the body is. And oftentimes, especially with arboreal snakes, you want to have the hook itself above the hand that is gripping the rest of the snake's body. If I were to inverse this, it immediately creates a reaction to where the snake starts to climb up the hook, which oftentimes when you're using a hook with a snake, that's exactly what you don't want that animal to do. Another thing to think about too is the angle of the hook when you're holding it. So you see right here, my hand, my wrist is below the head of the hook, and it is angled upward, but is not so high up to where the snake can potentially slide back down the hook onto my arm. Essentially, this is what you want to do with the animal, and it applies some of the same principles like I was mentioning before of changing that animal's attention somewhere else to spinning with that snake, really creating a lot of separation between you and the animal. And I'm doing this with a hook that is not particularly large right now. The larger you go on your snake hook, the less control you have at the end. So when choosing a snake hook, you want to choose one that kind of serves two different purposes. One, gives you enough separation between yourself and the snake to where you're keeping a safe distance as often as you can, but not a hook that is so large that you lose control of the actual animal itself. It's kind of a delicate balance. I always like to err on the side of a little bit of a smaller hook with non-venomous snakes, of course. With a venomous snake, I never want to use a hook that would put me anywhere in the range of within the strike range of that animal.
A few moments later.
When it comes to non-venomous snakes and the stakes are a little bit lower, I personally would rather have a little bit more control and be a little closer to the animal, potentially putting myself in a situation where the animal could strike past the hook and get me. But if you apply all these principles that I've been talking about through the video, you really should never be in that position to begin with.
Message!
So what I'll often do with the scrub pythons in particular, but really any snake, instead of going above the head, I'll go under the head, under the chin right there with the hook. And if the animal is defensive, you go under the chin and kind of use it to push the animal back. So if the snake is up in the S position, looking at you, looking to strike, if you go on top of the head, experience just aggravates them. But if you go under, it kind of disarms them a little bit, breaks the tension on that S curl, and then you can push the snake back by their chin. And they kind of disorients them a little bit in a way where they're like, okay, why am I moving like this? They're not necessarily aggravated. They're not being hit from the top. Obviously, every animal is an individual with their own unique personality. But if you apply these principles to your handling in general, and tools that I've given you guys can work for almost every single animal I've had hundreds of scrub pythons, many species of boas and pythons that I've worked with in my time. And by using some of these tricks and tools, I've gotten to the point where almost all of the animals end up having either very good attitudes, or we kind of have a mutual understanding of how the relationship will go. And I rarely, if ever, take bites from any of my snakes, which is personally one of the things that I try to strive for as a keeper. I think it's just best for me, for the animals, and for really everybody involved, and for the community as a whole. Honestly, the better we understand our animals, the more professional we can present ourselves, and the better faces we can be for the community at large. All right, everybody, thank you for checking out that video. Hopefully some of those tricks and tools were helpful with handling your snakes. If you liked it, if you're not already subscribed on the MorphMarket channel, please subscribe here to the channel. A new vlog comes out every week from some of the best collections in the entire world. If you want to follow me, I'm on Instagram at Scrub Shepherd, Stephen Kush on Facebook, Stephen Kush or at Kush Reptile on YouTube as well. And I'm also Kush Reptile on MorphMarket. Once again, thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed this video.